Good evening. Today is July 9th, 2026. It is 6 p.m. and we are calling our meeting back to order for a budget workshop. Debbie, would you like to take a roll?
Jason Moreland. Here. Andrew Baldridge. Here. Rod Hedstrom.
Here.
Mayor and Council, tonight Matt Lawn will handle a majority of our presentation, but I just wanted to refresh just a little bit. Tonight we will be talking about primarily utility funds and special funds, a little bit of capital mixed in there with it. And just to provide you with a breakdown of kind of how our mill levy is split up again, city from the total that a citizen would pay of their property taxes, the city assesses about 25% of that, county 21%. And you notice the school district is the largest part of assessments to a mill levy. If you're in the Valley Center School District, it's around 45% of the mills that you pay. If you're in the Wichita School District, it's around 35% of the total mills you pay. State equates to about 1%, and other being township and library system, and county fire takes up about 17% of that. I'll turn it over to Matt.
Good evening.
Start out with talking about the street fund. Street fund is financed primarily through a transfer from the general fund, kind of capturing tax that's transferred to this fund for smaller scale. And here, projections, tax, state, side, and the carryover. General may increase somewhere, depending on capital budget. Also, talk about personnel side. You had I think a position or portion of a couple of positions in prior years here, and they're no longer. Double check on the personnel line. I believe it was staff training that went here. I don't know why that personnel line shouldn't be shows up that way. I'll see if I can. Should be a as far as your other expenses here, you should have handouts that show the line item detail if you'd like to look. Point out a few things that there's not really anything outside of from here. It's administrative type costs that come here, as well as commodity side parts and stuff. Per request from staff, we did increase the budget, parts and supplies, 20% off the budgeted amount due to essentially the nature of inflation, cost impacts. I bumped up the fuel a little bit as well per the. Again, these are. I'm expecting everything to fall within for the current year within operating budget. I did plug in. If you look down at that bottom line, the capital outlay line, I plugged in some expenditure for this year, even though there hasn't been any, and I don't know that there will be type of projects. Put it in there just for, in case, flexibility going forward to, potentially it could be. I don't think you would want to put any actual non-project expenses here, but you could, for instance, push that into transfer this out into capital fund for some of your larger scale street projects to pay for potentially. Again, it's really just a. And again, I'm carrying forward transfer for overall, this fund is operating within its limits. Again, if I didn't plug in that 150,000, that 200,000 for this, be a pretty significant increase in cash balance, but leaving money there in case of it. So when we do start next year, we should have a higher fund here forward. Operations wise, you're operating positive here. Are there any questions about streets?
We got you, so, just looking at this, so the budget is for revenue is 276,000, but we're spending 304,000. So,
Again, I'm plugging in a capital line there that is really to carry budget authority, not expenditure. That's
So-
all it's for. It's for adopting, so you have the flexibility to do that and still operate with fund balance. I'm not proposing you spend it. I'm saying we're giving you flexibility there. If you wanted to use it for projects, or again, like a transfer to your other fund some of your larger scale projects.
so I guess my question would be, why wouldn't we just reduce that so that we have basically a balanced budget, that we're not spending?
You have a balanced
More.
budget if you take into account your carryover fund balance. According by Kansas state
Okay.
budget law, balanced budget is carryover plus
Yes.
revenue minus expenditure. So you do, by the word of Kansas statute, you have a balanced budget here. Just have you're operating, showing a potential operating deficit. Again, for the purposes of budgeting, for adopting a budget, I plugged in additional expenditures there in that capital line item. You have the flexibility. All we're doing, we're not committing to anything, simply adopting a budget that allows you to operate within your budget authority and spend up to, going to propose to adopt when you set the budget.
Matt, is it normal to not have any personnel accounting to our street budget?
If you had a larger regular revenue source here, I would yes, but for the amount of operating expenses you have here, you really don't have much of an offset. I mean, if you were going to have a strict Public Works only employee that only did street stuff, that would make sense.
Right.
Yeah, in other organizations where you have multiple funds that pay for Public Works Department and everything, it makes sense to spread that around to the different ones. But again, what you're doing when you do that is you don't have enough tax revenue, for instance. It's dedicated to operations to make that contribution to Public Works. The only reason you're able to do it here is because you have a contribution from the general fund, which is, that's kind of the purpose of the general fund. Collect everything and pay for it out of there for whatever your purposes are. It makes more sense to fund streets. If you're going to be funding streets with general fund revenue, it makes sense to transfer it to streets rather than create a streets department within the general fund, because you need to have a street fund already, because you need that fund to collect fuel taxes. So if you're going to do that, it makes sense to do it. Street fund, if you wanted to put more wages here, could, but again, you'd have to increase your general fund contribution to it. Whereas you're pretty much able to fund most of your Public Works Department through what you currently have in the general fund plus what you have, where most of their funding comes from. That's most of it. Move on to utility funds now. So your water fund revenue is up. You had a increase that went into it. Water revenue. Projected a budget year, depending on how possible. Personnel costs, we essentially, the methodology I've used so far for personnel is assuming nothing's committed yet for budgeting purposes, assuming a 5% COLA adjustment, COLA/merit adjustment to base pay. We did another percentage, other personnel costs to match how that would impact them. The exception of health insurance, which based on prior year increases, we budgeted about a 20%, between 18 and 20%. We have again increased based per request from department head, increases for parts and supplies, increases for fuel, like we did. Seem to be the drivers of growth. Every budget I've looked at so far this year. Water self-supporting now. I'm happy with your carryover fund balance there. The sort of rule of thumb you want for a utility fund is anywhere between 15% on the extreme low end and 25 to 35%. Probably really want to be. You're falling into that. You have, from what I understand, you have built in an annual multiplier for water, which is good. And if you haven't already, you should. Well, are there any questions here? Operations. I've played with the idea of, and again, we may discuss this when we get to including some more transfers.
Okay.
Equipment reserve, possibly some of your capital improvement fund, just for things like, you're going to be having more housing, new housing housing projects, developments coming online. Sometimes it's good to keep a little fund balance available for things like offsetting some of the issuance fees and things like that come along with that permanent offset. For now, this 100,000 transfer to water reserve, which is good now. I don't know if in the past you transferred the utility from this utility to any of your capital or equipment reserve fund type operations, but that is a good way to make use of surplus revenue. Those kind of things. Again, it's essentially using your budget authority to build cash for projects without spend it necessarily in.
Does that, is there any bonds or financing payments that are due from water?
Yeah, that's that $100,000.
So that all goes to
Water
the
reserve.
payment back, it goes to a payment?
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's not building the reserves, it's used to finance, that's to make payments on,
those payments
okay.
come out of there. So and we can even talk about increasing that amount to build fund balance there for, actual reserve purposes. That's how it's been funded.
What are how much is the bond payments that we make out of water? So
I don't have it in front of me. I can get
Okay.
that. It'll be part of the next budget workshop, because we're going to talk about bond and interest fund and all the reserve
Okay.
funds and everything. We'll have
Thank
that.
you.
And I would actually like to do a full, we don't have to do it for budget, but at some point I would like to do just a full breakdown of complete debt portfolio. You can have a 10,000 foot high view of it. It's a good practice to revisit that periodically. I want to say that almost all of that goes to that that payment helps solve
That's
that.
what I was thinking.
I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure it's all. I think in prior year, I think I rounded it up from somewhere. So there's a couple thousand probably that'll go toward balance.
So I have a question. You mentioned you worked in 3.5% increase in the number. You mentioned at the beginning that you figured out 3.5.
3%.
Well, he said 3.5. That's what I'm asking.
I'll verify.
Okay, because our escalation rate is 3%.
3%,
Yeah.
So if I did bump it up a little bit above that, it would have been based on prior performance year. So even though your rate is only going up 3%, because it's water and usage can drive it as well, I may have just justified it with additional or more usage, or it wouldn't have been a straight rate base.
Okay, thank you. Another question, you said 5% for COLA and merit, and then you said another % for personnel costs. Do you know what % you have on that item?
So when I'm saying that, I'm saying non-wage personnel costs. So it's going to be things like capers, their contributions to, FICA, things like that are based on wages. So that's what I would have adjusted. With the exception of health insurance costs, which I put it, I believe for water I put 18%. But I can double check that too. It's another thing. What time of year do you health insurance? I want to say you got it before budget before the end of the budget.
No.
Yeah, I think it's
Health
late,
in-
late summer.
No, health
So
insurance we usually get that in the fall, and then it goes into effect on March 1st. But
So if we get the notice of what the increase will be, I'll reflect that in budget. Otherwise, if you're comfortable with it, I'm just going to project between 18 and 20%, depending on which fund it is, which employee. The dirty secret about health insurance now is that it's not based on prior conditions anymore. It's based solely on age. So your departments that have a higher age population are going to see and it's fractional. We consider everybody together, but we'll see different departments. I'll try to, if we can find it, I'll try to pull previous years notices on that, and we kind of do health insurance. But for budgeting purposes, I'm comfortable with numbers. But again, if we get that notice prior, I'll make sure that final budget.
Question on the personnel. Do we have a list of what personnel in the city are covered in this fund?
We do. I can get that. I didn't use it. I don't have access to personnel payroll stuff.
Yeah, just asking who's being paid out of that fund.
Yeah, and what I'll do is, again, it's something I like to do, especially when you see that we've got, different funds having personnel costs and others. Sure, everything's legit. Because what I'll do is I'll do essentially a entire spreadsheet, taking in everybody's current wage, projecting out what the year end will be for that, then plugging in a 5% for next year. That'll be, and basing, the percentages for FICA, percentages, capers, everything else based on that. We can even build in, I'm not super familiar with your vacation and sick leave policy, but we can even build in a portion for like liability, vacation and sick for any employees that may employment, and then I don't know what your policy is, saying that stuff out. But what I used to do, my last jobs, we had an interesting policy for vacation leave. For most of the time I worked there, you could carry over up to a full 160 hours. So the most I would have to, hold liable for each employee was the max of 160 hours for each employee in addition to their normal wage. But sick was different. So fortunately or unfortunately, people tend to use sick tend to not accumulate large numbers of sick pay over time, especially with a younger employment base. They've got kids who've got are out of school, so they're using sick fairly regularly. But the problem we got to when you had older employees who are close to retirement, been there forever, had accrued sick leave, and they're based on city policy. You were able to, when you left, you were able to take with you 5% of your accrued sick leave for every year you were there. So if you had 700 hours of accrued sick leave, and you've been there for more than 20 years, that's 700 hours of regular pay that you got out when you left. Like, I don't know, I don't think that is a very antiquated way of doing
Yes.
sick leave. And the only reason that my former employer did it that way is because they had, at some point, they had swapped that benefit for, at some point they'd had like a longevity type pay situation, and so they swapped that for that. But again, ultimately, it was a cost saving thing. I didn't expect people to actually accrue that much over time, but last year I worked there, I had 3 who've been there close to 20 years leaving, and a lot of them had a lot of sick time. So that had to get built into the budget
Right.
for that amount of money in their hiring.
I do have another question on that. Is it common practice to switch to industry standards, which goes to paid time off, having PTO instead of having separated vacation and sick time?
I wouldn't say there's any standard for it. It really is a cost thing. If you have, I can argue for both ways. As a municipal employee, I vastly preferred having sick and vacation because
I think most employees do.
Yeah. Well, usually vacation, if you're not going to use it, you're going to get paid. Within a reasonable amount, it's going to get paid out. So if I didn't take vacation, at least I'd have a little bit of anniversary to do this. And from an employer's perspective, though, I understand why
The
you would
PTO.
want that, because you combine it all together, you use it, it's gone, and you can. And what we're seeing now, even in the corporate world, I don't know if these are doing it. Limited PTO. You can take as much as you need to use and use it whenever you want to, but it never. And if you're abusing it,
Right.
regardless of what the policy says.
Right.
use
So
disciplinary
are most municipalities staying with the sick leave and vacation time, or are there some that are changing over to PTO?
I definitely know there are some that have changed over, but it's
Okay.
probably been happening over the course of the last 15 years. I know for sure several cities in the Kansas City area that I've applied for work for in years past had that kind of a policy, because you go through the process.
Right, right.
I definitely saw it in that area. So smaller communities, more rural communities, they tend to stick to the old way just because maybe not as up-to-date management standards or whatever, so they're not getting this kind of stuff fed to them.
Right.
Conferences. But
Right.
it's definitely trending in that direction. for
Yes,
sure.
yes.
But I couldn't say whether, I couldn't say. Some of the bigger cities with like union representation like that, not necessarily going that way.
Right.
but
So is that something that in the future we could do a cost compare? If we stayed with the traditional model, or if we looked at potentially, modernizing to
Yeah,
PTO?
we could. I mean, the way you would do it is you'd take a look at historical use of sick and vacation. Take a look at, we can get a couple years projections based on it. And then we would, talk about, if you did it that way, what the anticipated, usage would be. Your current system, PTO type system.
Thank you.
So I noticed that the association dues were 1,615 last year, and we dropped them down to 800. Is there a reason we cut that in half? The bottom.
I see it.
Are we still on water?
Yes.
On the first page.
Yeah, on
First page.
down
of
line
water.
5850, 5143, association dues. Have we, if our actuals were double
I can
last
look
year.
at it. I think it was I think I carried forward the budget amount. I could look into it.
Okay.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think there may
Okay.
have been, I think it may have hit specific training or something. I can't remember, but I'll take a look at it and I'll make note of it here. Adjust that back.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for pointing that out. Again, some of this stuff was carried over based on prior year budget, and I adjusted it such, but
Bonds and insurance dropped way down too.
On technical services,
Mm-hmm.
went from 1,200 to 400.
I think IT stuff got,
12,000.
some of the line items got switched around for
Okay,
new provider, but
okay.
again, I don't know if that may also have been that may also have
Special
been,
incident.
that may also have been new service. So I'll look at it.
Or, I mean, I know that sometimes we, like I said, find that how we are coding things and change things does affect that. I just,
Mm-hmm.
that was a pretty significant
Yeah, it is.
change.
And the bonded insurance also significantly dropped.
I mean, I don't mind it going down.
No, but I
But I don't
understand what
also
you
want to
mean.
be caught unaware and say, okay, well,
No, I understand.
We-
And what I'll do is again, I can't remember every single item I
No,
adjusted,
no.
but my thought is it was a thing where we had one-offs the budget year. So I'll double check.
Right.
well,
Right.
then,
Other professional services, professional fees, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
and then, I guess, arts and supplies went from just under 19,000 to 85,000. Is that from equipment being purchased that we,
It was, I think,
or we expect to?
I think it was underutilized in '25. And but I still added to it based on request from Thomas for budget purposes. We'll look at everything.
So, I guess the other one I'm looking at is items for resale.
Mm.
So we're expecting to pay a lot less for our water, but bring in more. Well, I know we're gonna bring in more, just because, I mean, we have that multiplier.
That number,
But-
that number is based off current year, so I'll do a full forecast
Okay, well, I just saw the,
on year to
like I
year.
said, 25 said the 346, and I don't know if that has to do with water restrictions and people are using less water, so we're buying
I'll-
less water.
I'll look at, I'll dial back into it. I base the revenues and stuff off my trends, off my trend analysis.
Okay.
I'll go back into it.
Okay.
Well, we'll do a brief overview of all of these budgets tonight. You too. I'll have balance, balance financials for June
Okay,
then too, so that covers. This is all based on essentially, I think I have May. Projections are taking into account that it's not a full half number.
yeah,
We'll have updated numbers
okay,
too.
thank you.
So the much tighter on budget, particularly this year, gas utility. And if you look at contractuals lines, you'll see in there that the reason for that was that gas project we had, which was a big, that contractor's construction line in 61, that, that was a big expenditure on the budget. So that's essentially what drove that fund balance. consider, we'll look into it when we get sending other capital items, but I would consider potentially journal entering those costs to capital improvement fund, creating a project fund and entering expenditures there if we want to, fund balance purposes. So what we do is just go to the month transaction was made. This fund to capital improvement as a 1.2. There's more, but again, it's taken away from other, things you would use. Again, you will be able to survive in the black within budget if you leave it there. It's something to consider. We don't have to make it.
I do have a question on that.
Sure.
With potentially looking at expansion of our natural gas system, would we not want to be protecting that monies?
Yeah. That's why I would like to, again, you're not
Okay.
hitting that, hopefully we'll be closer to it next year. We'll be much closer to it next year. Again, you're not hitting what I would call that minimum reserve balance of 15 to 25% with current year. And, you're not, they're going to ask about it if you, go through a bond rating again after this year. But, again, I also would not be surprised if your revenue picked up above what I've projected for the rest of the year. In all probability, it will end up higher than that, but again, still, I don't think it's going to be minimum reserve year to year.
And I guess my same question on this one is the transfers, that goes to cover debt costs mostly.
Yeah, the gas reserve transfer is the debt payments. Then again, I've tried to build it up a little bit. Money back into.
Yep.
I'm just maintaining that. If there was more cash, I'd want to.
Well, like I said, I do think it's, we do definitely want to have a decent reserve fund, knowing that we
Yeah.
could have issues. We know that what happens when we have Winter Storm Uris that happen, that we need to have some of that.
And, nobody ever does it. I would say best practice for utility is I would want at least 90 days operations. And that's an arbitrary number specific to infrastructure, but it's a nice piece of cash to have down payment. Getting preliminary work done. If you do have to go out for debt on something, you start getting the preliminary work done. You get it done at a time. Pay debt proceeds in the case of an emergency. I would like to see that across all utility funds at all times. Reserve of at least 90 days is technically 25% operating budget. But again, 25 to 35 range, I think, more than reasonable. Not only a fund balance reserve, operating or a capital reserve.
And where are we at right now?
I'll have it with the queue.
Only at about 10%? Is that what you said?
Well, it's if my estimate is correct, yeah. If we take out the big payment for the project, not counted as operating cost, basing it purely on. The end of next year, you should be pretty close to 25%, but we're not gonna hit this year. It's closer to probably 12 to 13.
So that's the ending fund balance, but that doesn't include what's in reserve, correct?
The reserve fund balance.
The reserve, I'm sorry, what was that?
The gas reserve. I'm confused. Sorry.
You're talking
I'm
about
talking
the
about-
ending fund balance,
Yeah, ending
not
fund.
the gas reserve.
I would call the ending fund balance the operating reserve.
Okay.
Your reserve fund is
Yes.
specific.
Okay, that's why I just wanted to make sure, clarify, because I thought our
But again,
reserve fund was a little healthier. then, but I'm not sure.
I'll present it. I'll have all
Okay.
Well, but again, I just want to reiterate, my sort of recommendation is going to be 25 to 35% for both an ending fund balance and for a reserve fund, for a utility, that same range. Again, it's something to build towards. You're not, for debt issuance purposes, for ratings and stuff like that, they want to see 25%. But I think a more, healthy amount is going to be 25 to 30. 50% at absolute. And this is where I really worry, add low fund balance. We're moving in the right direction again. Also, just, not putting as much as I would like to see into sewer reserves. Not putting we are putting some into small amount, $15,000. I'm pushing in equipment reserve. Not nothing, and it's good to have all of your money-making utilities, quote unquote, utility funds, putting stuff into reserves because they all use it. But again, I'd like that to be higher. But again, with I believe Matt spoken previously. Rate adjustments.
Yeah, our sewer
Wastewater.
rates are much like our water rates. Rates were adjusted several years ago. So that's one thing we need to do this year, building that escalation rate to cover those costs.
And to reiterate Councilmember Moreland's point about no need for future system expansion, it's going to be important to get this pushed back in the right direction as well. You have need for some sort of big increase in infrastructure, treatment, et cetera. It behooves you now to get at a healthier fund balance. So at that time, need to again say, hey, you have to add debt service. That expansion done. You're not in the position where you can't pay your regular bills without having to add on. It's gonna it hurts users for sure, pocketbook. But I have talked to Matt in the past, and I know you guys have done. We can help with that unless if you had something we can.
Again, noticing the numbers really different. The technical services, very high in 25, and now it's quite low.
Yeah, again, I think a lot of this has to do with specific to 25 expenditures or moving of where things.
Okay.
I will verify all that.
Yeah, and the parts and supplies.
Parts and supplies too. Same kind of thing. One-offs, but I'll verify.
So then the personnel request, will that be across all utilities, like how the breakdown is of who's being
I'm gonna do
paid?
it full.
Great.
It's easier for better their own fun, but you have you've got employees that are in water and sewer, and you have employees that are
Right.
in gas, you have employees admin partially, and other funds that will do a full breakdown. Stormwater utility. Again, it's not growing. I've plugged in some capital outlay money that, we don't necessarily have to adopt and help the year-end fund balance. This and next. I don't have any projections for actual expenditures. Capital plugged in there. Ability to, as far as operating last year, you were obviously positive. I don't anticipate that. I just plugged in purpose, giving you, or excuse me. I'll look at the technical services.
Technical.
You got technical services, you got printer and IT. Like, you're not the only organization I've ever worked with that has very confusing multiple technology line items. It was a constant fight between me and my former AP clerk about
So
what goes.
does the technical services, does that where our water testing, is that where that would go?
Can't understand what she.
With the technical services line, is that water testing? Yes.
Okay, because I would think that we would still need something in there if we're still expected to.
And I'll verify.
I know that Dustin reported last month the issues with getting the water testing done, but
Right.
yep.
I'll verify. In the last utility, solid waste recycling. Revenue's consistent, putting in minor year-to-year. Based on previous history. Operating. Pretty much carried forward personnel flat based on budget this year. And again, I'll look at the technical services, make sure those are properly accounted for.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't think in that realm we have much in technical services just because it's a pass-through service more than anything else. But, yeah.
I want to look at, I want to go
But-
in every,
Yeah, but like I said, we did spend 3,000 last year.
I want to go into
So-
all of those line items for last year, see how everything across the entire operation.
A question I have, probably more for City Administrator Jensby, is we were buying the machinery to test the wastewater. So is there allowance for that in one of these utility funds for the testing costs for that?
That came out of this year.
No, I meant, we'd have to send in the water test, won't we have to send in
Oh, the
tests?
additional testing, yeah, we'll make sure it's billed.
That was my question, thank you.
And because you're adding services like that, it is worthwhile. Rate structures account for that. Understand that I'm going to push. Or did you already do?
That is on this.
That was my last. The other.
And I will say I greatly appreciate getting these funds in this detail.
Yes.
I think this is very, very helpful. I know that in the general scenarios that we had the last meeting that you presented, we didn't have this great of detail.
You'll
But-
have, so, yeah,
but-
when we, next time we do a workshop, we're going to cover everything that we
Okay,
covered in
I
that
just,
one at the detail level.
And I will
Okay.
say that is what I have asked for, and I just want to say thank you.
Yes,
Because I do
yes.
appreciate it. I think it does help us understand what we're facing, what some of the trends are, what they were, what we hope to accomplish with some of those. So I do want to say thank you.
Yeah, and I'm building this out from scratch, but I've also got my analyst working on this as well. He's a little more gifted with Excel than I am, so it may look a little different, but we'll be using the same. Mine are not pretty, and they have all kinds of. You can't see it from this, but like when you look at it in the actual spreadsheet, down to not pretty, and I do like pretty.
Yeah, I really appreciate the format tonight. Very much more informative, and I really appreciate the effort.
I want to go into this level for all of your, all the remaining, workshops, other presentations. I think you're going to have your department heads come in, to talk about their individual budgets. Next meeting or meeting after, whatever that is. Yeah, they'll have access to level of detail. I'll make sure we discuss everything.
I appreciate that. Anyone else have any questions?
Can I say one more?
Go for it.
Okay, we need to really tighten up the sort of, plan for capital, across everything. You've got these big street projects. Last meeting, you guys talked about, last meeting I was here, you talked about other future stuff that you want to talk about. And I think it's really important to have that big conversation.
I agree.
We're going to cover a lot of it with the budget process, but sometime in Q4 this year, I'd like to do a true, nothing from you guys to do. I want to present to you basically multi-year forecast for not only cash, but the various funds that are involved with transferring to capital, line items, capital and reserves. We have a broad picture. And, budget kind of sets that. The operating budget for the year is going to set the final stake and where it's going to go. We can kind of that projection. And that doesn't need to be a long meeting. To be honest, it's really not a lot of work on my part. It's really just known expenditures, known cash amounts, and all your. I have a couple of things. I have a couple of different ways I like to present those type of things, but I think what I've got planned, guys, will make sense without being overly complicated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They have my email.
I can get the form. Yep, absolutely.
Anybody has anything, the way I handle dealing with governing bodies, if you guys have any requests, I respond to everybody, whatever information. If you have anything, either go through Matt or come to me.
Anything else? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the workshop.
Move we adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Council President Hedstrom, second by Council Member Baldridge. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned from our workshop.
I don't think.
7, 9, 26.
Yeah.